I've spent the last 4 years growing an Etsy shop to a 6-figure business that sits among the top 1% of all Etsy sellers. Welcome to the channel. If we haven't met, my name is Sam. I run a 3D print farm from underneath my basement. Over the past 4 years, I have dedicated myself to selling on Etsy and absorbing every ounce of knowledge I could from the platform. Throughout this journey, I have been experimenting with Etsy ads the entire time. I have made huge mistakes with Etsy ads, and I have made huge gains with Etsy ads. Today, we're going over my Etsy ads best practices. Hopefully, you can use some of these insights in your own shop and get a few extra sales this season. Stick with me because one of the insights I'm sharing today is so important to Etsy ads that without it, all the other stuff doesn't really matter. I know not every seller believes in Etsy ads, and if you find yourself going down the YouTube Etsy guru rabbit hole one night, you will find plenty of people that think you should never spend any money on Etsy ads. I'm not really here to convince you if Etsy ads are good or bad, but what I do believe is that every business needs to have a line item budget for advertising. So if you are selling on Etsy and you are going to advertise, it seems like a logical first step would be that you try out the Etsy ads program. So if that's the boat you're in, stick around and we will get into everything I've learned about Etsy ads. One of the first questions every Etsy seller has to answer is, what listings am I going to advertise? I advertise every new listing I create on Etsy, but I only advertise 20% of my listings at a time. Did I get you? That didn't make a whole lot of sense, did it? Here's what I mean. We all know that not every listing we put on Etsy is going to be an Etsy bestseller. In fact, the 80-20 rule applies to Etsy like it does almost every other business I can think of, and it states that 20% of your Etsy listings are going to generate 80% of your Etsy revenue. The question that's hard to answer isn't what listing am I going to advertise, it's what listing is going to be a good seller for me and be in that 20% bucket. Unfortunately, this is one of the harder questions to answer on Etsy, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of logic to it. And believe me, I have tried. I have done multiple listings where it is these same pictures, it is the same description, it is the same keyword, and it is the same section, it is the same shipping, everything is the same. The only thing I change is maybe one word in the title. Of those listings, one will do great, the others, nothing happens with. It's for this reason why I advertise every new listing I create on Etsy. I want to find out as soon as possible if this new listing is going to fall in to that 20% good seller bucket. Doing Etsy ads is a great way to boost the views on the listing, see if it's going to convert well, at the same time showing Etsy that it converts well so that they start to give it more love in their organic traffic. I've found that I can usually make the determination if a listing is going to be in the good seller category or the sit and do nothing category after about 30 days of advertising on Etsy. So all of my listings get a 30-day run of advertisement before I turn it off. This brings us to our next consideration when determining what listings to advertise, and it's the ROI or return on investment for any given listing that we spend ad money on. After 30 days of running ads for a new listing, I look at the results and I ask myself one question: is the ROI 3x? Based off of my unique business numbers and margins, which I'll get into in a second, I know that I need an ROI on my ad spend to be at least 3x. So if an advertisement after the first 30 days does not have at least a 3x return on it, I'm turning ads off for it. So why do I always look at 3x? It's really simple math. Your, X might be different. You might need a 2x, you might need a 5x. It's really going to be dependent on your unique industry and numbers and what you're selling. But the math holds true regardless of what you're selling, and this is how it breaks down. My shop runs at about 60% margins, meaning if I make a $10 sale, I keep $6 of that $10. If I had an ad spend for that same sale and I was running at a 3x ROI, that means I would have spent $3.33 to get that $10 listing. If we take that $3.33 off of the 6, now my profit margin is only $2.67, or about a 26% profit margin. A 25% profit margin is as low as I'm willing to go. Some people might say I'm crazy for going that low and they think I should be at 40%. Other people might say, well, it's online retail, you should make money at 10% profit margin. I'm not here to debate that. That's what I have determined is right for my business. You should determine what is right for your business. But it's for that reason why my ROI number is 3x. So after your initial 30 days of advertising, if your ROI is 1x or even 2x, anything below 3x, there's a good chance you're probably working to break even, which would be the best case scenario. there's also a chance you're losing money. If you do this for all of your new listings, eventually you will be left with an Etsy shop that is just advertising its very best listings, which of course is the place you want to be. Obviously though, there are exceptions to every rule, and there's always potential that a listing that might not perform well in the first 30 days gets traction later on down the road. You start seeing sales from it, you start seeing better organic views from it. If that happens, it's worth taking a look at and maybe turning ads back on for it. This isn't like a one chance and that's it type situation. Etsy is always changing things. They're always messing with their search, their algorithm, so it's very possible that a listing that performs poorly in the beginning might get traction down the road. Maybe give it another chance on Etsy ads. A mistake I see new Etsy sellers often make is they don't spend enough on their Etsy ads. To draw from my younger, dumber days, scared money doesn't win. Once I have my list of my best performing Etsy listings that are getting me at least a 3x ROI, I am slamming the Etsy ad button as hard as I can, and I'm going to spend as much as they will let me. You would think that a company that makes money off of advertisement would spend someone's entire budget. I've actually found that to not be true with Etsy. I have oftentimes had my ad max budget be one number, and at the end of the day, they only spent half of it, 3/4 of it, a quarter of it. It's really dependent on the search traffic that day. An element that's important to remember is that your ad views are based off of the search demand for the keywords that are active in your listing. If people aren't searching for any of the keywords that are in your listings, Etsy isn't going to show your ads and you're not going to pay. So when I say I'm trying to max out what Etsy will charge me, it's not that I'm maxing out my budget, it's that I am watching what my ad spend is every day. And if I get to a day where if my budget was 25 and I hit 25 that day, the next day I'm going to 50. And if I hit 50, the next day I'm going to 200. And if I hit 200, the next day I'm going to 300. I'm going until I don't actually spend my entire budget in a day. My biggest fear around Etsy ads isn't that I'm going to spend X amount a day. It's that I'm not spending enough and that my ads are going to get used up by 2 in the afternoon and everyone's shopping from 2 until midnight aren't seeing my products. That doesn't work for me. Which brings us into our next insight, and that's you gotta know when people are buying your products on Etsy. Most shopping on Etsy and really all e-commerce platforms happen in the evening. And I know for myself personally, I have days where 75% of my sales come between 8 p.m. and midnight. So what I see happening with people that finally take the leap into Etsy ads is they turn on their budget and they do like $2 or $3. Etsy spends their entire ad budget, they get no sales, they go, this is stupid, I'm not gonna increase the budget, or worse, they just turn the budget off, and then they get caught in that loop of just spending $2 or $3 a day but never getting any sales. I did that loop myself for probably a year. I'd turn on the ads, nothing would happen, I'd turn them off, and then a few weeks, a month would go by, and I'd be like, well, maybe it's different now, and I'd turn them back on, nothing would happen, I'd turn them off. What I learned is that you need to have a big enough ad budget so that your ads reach people when they're actually wanting to buy. Etsy starts showing your ads at 12 a.m. and they will continue to show your ads until 11:59 p.m. assuming you have a big enough ad budget to get you through the whole day. If your ad budget is completely spent by 8, 9 in the morning because it's only $3, you are completely missing out on the best buying hours of Etsy. So if you hear all that and you're still playing the what if game though, and you say, yeah, but what if I spend 25? What if I spend 50 and I still don't get any sales? Well, here's a little trick you can try. I personally don't do it because I think I would forget to turn them back on, but just turn your ads off in the morning at 2 in the afternoon, turn them on, see what happens, and maybe you'll get some sales in the afternoon, but then you gotta remember to turn them off for the next day and then turn them back on the next day. That's too much work for me, so I just make my budget big enough so I can have ads throughout the whole day. Alright, at the beginning of this video, I teased that one insight I had was so important that without it, none of the other insights really even matter. It's pretty simple. For any of the other things we talked about to even matter, you need to be selling a product that 1, people search for, and that 2, they actually buy. If you're selling products that are using keywords that even after using Etsy ads are only getting a couple hundred views a month, it's gonna be really hard to get enough views and enough traction to have Etsy ads do anything for you. If we look at the last 30 days of my Etsy ads, you'll see that my top 5 listings all get over 40,000 views a month each, with my number 1 listing getting over 160,000 views in the last 30 days. People tend to try to sell things they're interested in or sell things that support hobbies they're interested in, which is not a bad way to get started, but people also tend to overestimate the number of people who are also interested in those things. And even if that number is large, how many of those people are willing to buy something for those things? If you want your Etsy business to blow up and get to a point where it can support you and your family, I can almost guarantee you're going to have to sell things that you are not personally interested in. I've done videos in the past on how to find products that are primed to be good Etsy sellers. If you're interested, you can see that video here. The short answer though is I use Everbee to do it. So if you're interested in Everbee as the software, check out our links below. At the end of the day, you just need to sell what people want. That was your crash course in the 4 years worth of my Etsy ads knowledge. I'm sure I might have jumped over something or missed something else, so if you have questions, let me know in the comments. Etsy ads is only one piece of the puzzle to running a successful Etsy shop though. If you want to see all the apps that I'm currently using to support my 6-figure Etsy shop, make sure to check out this video here, and I'll see you over there.